Bam! We're live. And we're live. Don't mind me. Just award-winning affiliate, you know. It's this thing's solid. I'm sorry, ClickBank, but if anybody breaks in, one of my first weapons. Actually, third weapon. First weapon, gun. Second weapon, kids with knives. No, I'm just joking. Anywho, what are we doing today? I'm Big Matt right now. We're talking about Facebook targeting because it's an interesting subject. Basically, it changes every 6 months, and it's really dependent on the account itself too. Like, not all targeting works. And I was once talking to somebody, and they said something very smart. And they're like, you know, I don't honestly think there's like good marketers aren't just marketers with ninja tricks that nobody knows about. Like, of course they help and everything, but it's not just about that. It's about also basically having more tools. So it's like more things that you can try, because you know, it's even with working for, you know, creating an agency, working for an agency, everything like that. I thought that I could do something like, oh, I'll just make a one-size-fits-all package, you know, where it no longer turns into that, because it's like every account is a little bit different, every product is a bit different in how you market it. So it ended up almost being like a flow chart of, if you try this and it doesn't work, try this. And if you try this and it doesn't work, try this, etc. So there's really like a lot of art to it, and it changes over time. Like, we recently had iOS 14.5 drop, and that completely changed targeting. It went from like a very algorithm-based targeting where you didn't have to put too much effort into it, to a very, very granular targeting where you had to define interest again and kind of go back to the old school of advertising. So I figure I'm just going to have somewhat of a fireside chat, or, you know, galaxy side chat about just targeting, kind of where it's at, where we're at in 2022, what I noticed works. The best part about targeting, and I trained an absolute ton of media buyers, and I noticed based on the type of media buyer they are, whether they're a very logical media buyer or whether they're just like a creative media buyer. So people that are more creative, and hey, how's it going? Here, I'm just gonna pull up my chat right now. I don't know. Josh! Heck yeah, how's it going? So yeah, it's basically like it changes up all the time, and you can't really use one method. It's going to change from time to time. You have to update it. You have to try different things. And there's certain accounts where it's like, woohoo, lookalikes works, and there's other accounts where it's like, basically, yeah, no, lookalikes don't work. You know, you try to do the same old targeting for it, and it's yeah, basically it doesn't work whatsoever for it. So it's kind of like giving it somewhat of a review of what targeting's best, kind of what's working right now, what's not working. We'll lower the music a little bit. Oh, camera is in the way. Should have thought that one out. I got more equipment now too. Oh, we'll just put it up a little bit like that. We got ourselves a pen. We got a Surface Connect wirelessly. Here, we'll go to a small mat version right now. And then, yeah, so basically starting it off is remarketing and retargeting, which it used to just all be called remarketing, and then everybody calls it retargeting. And how you can define it is, remarketing is once you've marketed to them, marketing to them again. Retargeting is basically, you know, just targeting them. So it's like retargeting that person. So it could be like video views, etc. Just going from there. So it's like retargeting. How would I rate it right now? Like, okay, we'll start doing some rating. Let's see if this even works. Or I can't rate worth anything. I typed my entire life. So when it comes to like what percent of spend you should be putting on retargeting, remarketing, it's quite low. Just in general, because what happens is right now, with all your other interests and how the algorithm got basically better, is retargeting and remarketing almost got included. So if you target general, it'll magically just retarget all your general audience and kind of just, you know, it'll do all that retargeting for you. So you used to be able to set up like granular retargeting campaigns and like have very specific budgets and everything. And now it's somewhat of a natural process that just happens where they're like, wait a second, if we just build this into the targeting, we can make our cold targeting, which is massive audiences, look a lot better. So it's like there still is a use for it. Like remarketing, it's pretty small amount of my spend overall. It depends on the product though, so it's very account dependent on this. Whether it works or not, I give it a smaller percent than most, because it used to work insanely well. Your retargeting campaigns used to be your best. Now it's like with retargeting campaigns, what you really have to do is just use that to push content to people who have already seen the message. So this isn't like your first click, like this isn't the content that you're going to. This is kind of like your objection handling content, everything like that. But you know, if we were to give it a score, so why not? Let's score all these. If we give remarketing like how good it is, in some ways it's good, in some ways it's bad. As of current now, like in the current state, I'll kind of give it like, let's do 4 out of 10. And yeah, it just has all these inherent flaws to it. There's lots of stuff that you can remarket. Like it's best to have large remarketing audiences, and you do need a lot of people. So it's like add to cart, initiate checkout. That used to be, you know, it's like those are typically the people that you're targeting with your objective or objection handling. You're retargeting stuff like your visits to your website, your video views on your ads, and I typically kind of go like 75% plus on my video views. The problem is with video views is it's like, well, if I have a 10-minute ad, 75% is a bit much, and I can do 50% for it. But if you have a story ad, it's like 30 seconds, then you definitely need like 100% view, etc. Or you're going to get a lot of lazy people that just kind of flip through it, etc. And another thing that I kind of like to rate on targeting is like how accurate the targeting actually is. And when it comes to accuracy, remarketing is probably the most accurate out of all targeting, because and we'll kind of go into it a bit more, but like remarketing right now, it's okay. Like you could do it. I'd recommend doing it, but it used to be a significant amount of your budget. Like it used to be one of those things where you'd want to put significant amounts of money on the retargeting side. Now, not so much. It's not something that I push a lot of spend into. It's just more of like trying to convert your current pool of audience. So that's like where I really I aim for those multi-touch videos of like, okay, here's where I need objection handling, here's where I need to push them through, here's where I run sales, etc. But when it comes to just like, and especially starting off, can you use remarketing when you first start a campaign? No, unless you have an existing audience to it. Another thing that you can remarket to is like your page likes, etc. You can upload email lists and do everything, but it's just less and less part of the campaign because Facebook's building it in. They build it into all their other targeting. Remarketing gets the credit for it on that targeting. So it looks like your cold targeting is good, but if you don't basically like exclude those people, your cold targeting is going to do that. And during COVID, I had a method where I'd basically exclude anyone that's visited the site on my cold interest just to make sure they're new people. And that's one of those 1,000 tool tips right there. It's like, it's basically one of those things where you don't, it's in order for them not to target remarketing, you really have to just negative target remarketing in your cold audience. And I more do this when I find it's a problem. So if I have a client that's already done $1 million of advertising, $10 million of advertising, like we've had clients who've done just stupid amounts, absolute stupid amounts of spend. And what they say is, yeah, you generated all these leads and sales, but they're already in the system. So guess what, Matt? You don't get credit. Fuck you. Well, they wouldn't be that straightforward, but that's what they're trying to say. And you know, that's kind of one of those things you have to factor in, and everything else. So here, one second. I just got to pull up dashboard. Bam. So yeah, that's one of those things where like sometimes remarketing can be used if you notice your campaigns, you're like, man, I'm targeting general, and I'm basically just hitting the same people every single time. What you can do is you negative target all your remarketed people on it, and that just forces, I call it, you know, it's a freezing cold campaign or ice campaign or whatever you want to call it. I had a bunch of stupid nicknames for it during the agency. You know, when everyone's like omnipresent remark, blah 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 blah. you make up a stupid name like it's something new, when really it's just a basic concept of like remarketing can be used for negative targeting. It can be used for lots of other things other than the actual remarketing part. And it's especially like if you're really saturated in an area like local business, etc., and you're truly looking to drive more business, like using remarketing to negative target, it will cost you more for it. Because what happens is with targeting, it's like, and actually we'll talk about this more on just the general, but yeah, you do a negative and it forces them to give you new prospects for it. So you don't always want there to just be, all basic, like all remarketing and remarketing is only used to target the people. No, it's also used to negative target the people. And remarketing too could even be like, you negative targeting your purchases, etc. Next one, we're gonna call this one G, just because I'm not creative. I'm a logical ad buyer. Don't judge me. But this is general targeting, and general targeting is really interesting because general targeting is the easiest targeting, because you don't put fucking anything in the target whatsoever. So there's no targeting whatsoever in general targeting. And it kind of goes through, like, general retargeting's been through somewhat of a wave, where it's like pre iOS 14.5, it was at the best. It was right here. You used to be able to not put any targeting whatsoever. And you have the advantage that general targeting targets the entire population. So it's a massive audience base, and there's always a tax on your CPM. So you always have to pay a little bit more based on how many more basically like let's call them modifiers that you put on your targeting. So like to general target, I'll get the lowest possible CPM you can get, because there's no things being like, but they have to love catnip and they have to love handkerchiefs and stuff like that. For every little thing you do on the geo side, on every side, it's like there's a tax to it. So if I target the entire country versus targeting like a state or a city for it, there's like a layer of expense that goes on top of it. And only if it's worthwhile to have that tax on top of your media buying, like only if it makes up for it by getting more clicks and performing better, does it make sense to put any of that on. I'd say definitely on this side, go away tips. I don't care. I know how to do this. But we're kind of, I'd say at like this point right now, I'm starting to see general campaigns come back and it be more algorithm based. And one of the things is, let me just check my NDA. Just joking. But I guarantee going into next year, Facebook's going to have a longer window of how long they could view people, and them kind of cheating Apple's system and everything else. So it basically, it's getting better and better. The algorithm went from doing really good, and I wouldn't even say this is an accurate graph of what happened. It did slowly go down. It was basically like dropped off a cliff and then started rising up again. And we're kind of at this point right here where general campaigns will work right now. So I've seen general campaigns perform really well. Of course, it's like, okay, let's rate this targeting general. I'll give it like a 7 out of 10. It has room for improvement. One thing is it's really account based. So if you have a really seasoned pixel, general can work. If you don't have a seasoned pixel, general can still work. Like, I don't like to say any factor until you've tested it. But general is working a lot better now, and I'm seeing a lot of improvements for seasoned accounts and even beginning accounts. One downside about general is there's somewhat of like a 48-hour delay before you get any kind of traction on it. I call it the eating shit period. You gotta eat shit for 48 hours, and then the campaigns are absolutely amazing. But not always the case. So general, it's kind of like a hit or miss. You try it on the account, and sometimes it's not ready, sometimes it is ready. You somewhat have to start with a conservative budget in order to just even figure out if it's going to work, that you're not blowing like $10,000. You can blow like $50 a day or whatever your product is worth, like whatever a sale's worth. I technically like to start with around 1.5 that value. So if it's like if I make $40 from it, I like to go for 60, so I have a chance of getting 2 in a day, which is profitable, but also I'll get a minimum of 1 per day to see if it actually works out, and everything else. So that's kind of a factor too. But general is working quite well, and there is different factors and everything that you can put for it. But it's like general targeting is coming back. I think it's going to be similar to like during this COVID period, like during this period right here, general targeting, lookalikes, all the really broad targeting that would be like a massive amounts of population, and everything else, they're working just nutty. Where it was like, I was kind of regretting my career as a media buyer. Well, I was training media buyers, but just really thinking about, okay, if I can no longer turn this knob to make it better, what am I going to do? What am I going to do on that side? Like, what's my value going to be in the marketplace? Like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to get good at creative or landing pages or whatever else. So, like, it's eventually going to turn into a world where AI is not just going to make stupid avatars for people. It is going to kind of take over it. And, like, when algorithms get good and they're working, general targeting works, and it's, like, talentless zero targeting. And, one thing I heard from Facebook is they called it like the Netflix method. I took credit. I called it the 111. There's a ton of different names where you'd have one campaign, one ad set, and one ad. And typically that one ad set would be a massive audience. So you'd go for a big audience like general, like say in the US, it's a 300 million size audience. You do all the age ranges, everything, like, you know, you leave it completely open. Gender, just any gender whatsoever, all 10,000 of them. You know, you go anything that you want for it, because you don't want to add somewhat of a tax in order to do that. So even if I were to target male, even if it is a male, sometimes Facebook doesn't classify it right. Sometimes, like, there's lots of different factors now where they can change that. You could, even if they were to do male and type in their own, like, specify and then capital MALE, it may not be equal to what their male targeting is. So you really have to factor that. But definitely, I'd say general campaigns are one of the ones that I try at the start and kind of see if it works. It's a 50-50. I still give it 7 out of 10. Eventually, when your pixel gets optimized, general's gonna work. All right, next one, we have my favorite targeting. It's the most interesting targeting. Interest targeting. There's so many ways to go about interest targeting. Like, there's a million ways to go about interest targeting. So I'm going to make it better than general. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, because nothing deserves a 10 out of 10, or else we'd all be so rich that it's, you know, Facebook's just making a bunch of money for us, and it wouldn't, you know, why are we even here right now? Why aren't we on the beach? But yeah, with interest targeting, there's lots of different ways to go about it. So it's stuff that they're interested in. And one of the very, like, counterintuitive things is, a lot of the really good interests are really bad for you. Like, let's say if you have a personal development product, it may make sense, like, I'm going to target Tony Robbins. But the problem is with that audience is it's been absolutely pillaged since the beginning of Facebook ads. So I don't like to, like, I'll still target it just to see how it does and set up somewhat of a granular approach. But you almost don't want to do that. You want to go for correlated instead. So an audience that's correlated with personal development instead of being directly for personal development. Like, of course I want both, and this is the whole 1,000-tool method. Matt Farmer's 1,000-tool method. Till your field as efficiently as possible. But yeah, so it's like, I like to do correlations, because correlations can go a lot better than the actual, because like I said, let's say we target Tony Robbins. The issues with that is it's been absolutely pillaged since the beginning of Facebook. Next is, you know, it may not properly classify people, or it may classify people who maybe mistakenly clicked on his ad 4 years ago. You know that they've probably seen a lot of similar products like yours, or they've already been tainted in the market or anything like that. So, like, something that could be correlated to wanting success would be Rolex, you know, because it's not people who get a Rolex don't typically, like, they may be classified there, but the people that want stuff are usually classified under those audiences. So, you know, you classify stuff like BMW, Rolex, successful based stuff, because it, you know, it's a personal development, etc., what they want. You know, absolute clarity, or, you know, there's lots of different targeting for that, but you'll find a lot more success in those than the, like, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Tony Robbins, everything like that. There's also multiple ways to go about it. Like with interest, you could stack them, so you have multiple interests in the same ad set to make the audience bigger, which makes your costs cheaper. It's the whole, you get taxed for everything that you do. Typically at the beginning of the campaign, I start very granular, so I'll basically do separate interests. So I'll do like 1, 2, 3, 4, just all the way down. So it'll be like Tony Robbins, and then something like Rolex, and then something, related, or someone that is like a David Goggins, or something that someone hasn't already hit. And just basically from all those, you find the gems that work, and then you'd add them to a combined audience later down the line to make it more efficient. But the downside is, if you use interest at the very beginning, and you combine them all together, you don't know which one worked. So it's like you may have some rot in your campaign, and the rot really, really kills you in the end. You don't want to have campaign rot of all these, like, you have all these ad sets, and this one right here is getting traffic, but it's absolute garbage. So I'll typically use like a granularity to test all my interest, and then I'll go combined or something like that. Another thing you can target with your interest is stuff like your competition, everything else. Like and some of the best ad buyers that I've trained, I'll give you credit for this one, Sean, is, he came up with the most ridiculous things I've ever heard of. He's a very creative-minded person, and you're either one or the other. You're either creative or you're logical. I'm insanely logical. So for me, I just Machine Gun Kelly, like all these different, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll just do a ton and just beat them with granularity and data sets, and I'm like, according to my calculations, this is what's going to perform best. But it's not always the case. Someone like Sean, he came in just absolute swinging. This guy was setting up targeting I've never heard of before. He was like, he's working with some spiritual, but he's like, Matt, I'm going to target gypsies. And I'm like, okay. Because I never say no with targeting. It's like, so let's say this is all true right now. It may not be true for your account, or it may not be true in the future, or it may be, there can be different variables. And it's like, what happens is stuff comes in waves, like the general, where you stop using something and you discount it. You're like, okay, this is garbage targeting. I'm never going to use this again. And it was like, you get all these like preconceived notions in your head, like, oh, lookalikes are shit. I don't need lookalikes because my interests are so good. And it stops you from actually building out really big campaigns, really good targeting, and just finding the stuff that's absolute gems. Because over time, like, there's always going to be just a slow degrade of what you're actually doing. Like, you're just going to see it perform less and less. It's typically over time where it's like a cigar. It ages well. Campaigns don't age well. They're the exact opposite. It's like the way that Instagram... So I was at this big Facebook conference, and the way that they basically phrased it is they're like, oh, it's like a bubble system. And this was like one of the directors of Instagram, and he's like, there's all these bubbles, and they get smaller. And he's like, the first ones we target are the most likely to convert. The second ones, it's kind of less and less because we have to start reaching more based on your budget, and it's going to work less and less. And then third is it's going out to general. So you kind of get stuck in that method where you may be spending $50 a day, and the audience may be adding audience for it. But when you start having ad sets that spend $1,000 a day, $10,000 a day, etc., this process happens really quick. So it's like, yay, I got 5 days out of those brilliant gypsy ideas that I had before, which is not that useful. You can't really work with that when it comes to large amount of spends or anything else. So it's kind of like you want a lot of different winners. It's like you may crack something, but you're not done. It's like a phrase I always say, you gotta double crack it. So the cracking is so you can get it so it spends what it's supposed to spend. The double cracking is like what unleashes unlimited types of spend. And I've seen it before on a YouTube platform where basically they're stuck at like 1.3K a day. And the creative was cracked. And that enabled the ROAS to go up like significantly, like 100% gain in ROAS. And that allowed them to spend $100,000 a day at the same profitability and just work completely. So it's like, even if you cracked it, even if you're like, damn, I'm winning right now, time to go to the beach, life's good. It's like, no, you still want to be finding and building these campaigns in the actual background for it. So you have more ammo. It's like you want ammunition. If let's say if you have 100 working campaigns, 20 may stop working. It's like, cut them out, still got 80. But if you got 10 and 20 stop working, you're negative 10. You got nothing left. Or if you're unlucky and 8 of those go out, it's like, that's a significant amount of spend that you just lost for it. So interest is one of those targetings where I love interest targeting. Me and interest targeting go back. That's for sure. It's kind of how I started on this, because I started with a very granular effect, etc. And it's like, as much as I still love interest targeting, and this is kind of where I'd find my cold audience. like even versus the general. It's like general's probably going to overtake and outperform it. And I can't just sit here on my chair being like, well, I only have one method to buy. One method available. I'm interested. I'm not willing to try anything else. That would be blasphemy. Can't try any types of other targeting. And it's like you watch your stuff, just everything. And it's like once you have something cracked, you're good for a long period of time. And that gives you time to crack more stuff. So don't be lazy. Yeah, talking to you. Don't be lazy. Just keep creating campaigns. Next one we have is this is in the actual interest targeting, and I called it B because why not? Makes sense. And this is behavioral targeting. So it's stuff like engaged shoppers, etc. These can be really good to like layer on top of interest targeting. It depends what kind of product you have. Like recently got married. If you have a wedding product or a post-wedding product or something, or recently got engaged. Obviously, if you're a wedding photographer, that's a no-brainer. Just automatically target it. Why wouldn't you? It could be some of the best targeting over there, and it gets overlooked a lot. Behavioral targeting, it depends. So the problem is with this is that it's rare that you find accounts. Usually you don't find accounts where this is needed because it's already been done. And if it hasn't been done, it's like, okay, you haven't tried yet. So I'll kind of give behavioral targeting, even though I love it, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Kind of in there with that general targeting. Behavioral targeting, it's just a different type of interest. It's worth looking at. It's worth doing. It's like where behavioral target works is really good mass audience targets. So like, let's say, for example, I'm targeting an absolutely massive audience, or it's a very general product. Like I'm selling toilet paper. Everybody uses toilet paper. The people that don't, I don't want to target them anyways. They're disgusting. No, well, you could use a bidet too, etc. But yeah, you just want to work with it like that. Behavioral targeting, quite good. And next one thing not many people know about. Let's see if I can actually make some room on here. Here, I'm just gonna do a new one. We're going to the home. New whiteboard. Come on, Surface, you got this. All you have to do is make a new whiteboard. Yeah, loading tips. Thanks, Microsoft. I don't need tips. I told you. What? I gotta shut these off. Okay, well, while it loads, the next one, we're just gonna turn the music a little bit down for this because this is one of the more serious targets that you could do. Oh, this music basically isn't even showing up on the Richter scale. There we go. So, ABM. Next one, and I have as you can see right above me, bam, bam, bam. That's basically the legend of all the different targeting types. ABM. So ABM is awesome targeting. And this is the typical targeting that you have to, like, there's a certain person you get with ABM targeting, and there's certain networks where it works better, which is like ABM is account-based marketing, which is really undescriptive of what it actually is. It's like, it's targeting people's, like, where they work. So the companies they work at, their job, their positions, etc. It's just typically expensive targeting. Facebook, they know the value of this. You're paying high CPMs, it's low audience sizes, so you really have to, like, I guess allegedly, there's like 37 ways to rate vice president, where you could do like VP, vice dash president, vice space president, vice, etc. But ABM is really just like, it's good for corporate. So like if you're doing corporate marketing, this is good. So I once worked with a massive e-com company. I can't say names because I'm not allowed to, but I helped them get they're like an API, etc. I helped them get a Tesla contract, and it wasn't through Facebook, but it was through LinkedIn. Just basically targeting people who worked at these big companies like Fortune 500, like Tesla and etc. And then targeting all the people. So it's like director of marketing, senior marketer, and etc. Just trying to target all the positions. And you're basically carving out chunks of companies that you want to target for it. Or you can just target positions. Like, let's say if you have a marketing service and you just want to sell to corporation, you're going to be targeting stuff like marketing directors or senior marketing managers, or there's a million different titles for it, but it's probably one of the best ways to do very corporate. You pay a lot, and it's a very, very long sales cycle. So with this, it's like I followed the clicks back for this because I had a savage amount of tracking. It was like a 3-month conversion rate, and the click cost was insane. But it was a multi-million-dollar contract, so who cares? You know, at the very beginning, I paid like, and this is the commitment, and this is where the remarketing kicks in for like hitting different content. But the problem is, like, if you do this kind of strategy, you have to be careful how you remarket to them. Because if you're also targeting general and everything else, you're paying a lot to retarget to absolutely everybody when you want to target these guys specifically. So it's like, I pay a lot for the click. You know, it could be like $5 plus per $5 plus per click. It was like $10 at the time, and then you're just constantly hitting them until they're ready to even make that decision, etc. But like job titles, companies they work at, etc., could be very helpful for it. ABM doesn't typically count like their education or schools or anything they went to. That can be a good type of targeting, their level of schooling, etc. But it's like ABM, I save this for, it's like if I got a really hard corporate contract where it's like, well, only about 1,000 companies in the US could even possibly afford us or use us. And then I'm like, oh, can I get a list of those companies? So I'll target all of them, the decision makers, everything. And it better be a big contract, because you're not selling them a $5 service for this. You're selling them tens of thousands to millions of dollars. Like the contract we sold was worth millions. So the marketing cost to acquire that was probably like $500 to $1,000 over a savage period of time and everything else. Was it worthwhile? Yes. Would I do it again? Yes. Actually, no, I'm never working with corporate again. Just joking, corporations that want to hire me. I'm good at corporate. But it's very dry marketing. It's very different. It's a very different style that you do. But ABM marketing, it can work on Facebook. It's not the best. And this is a good time to talk about like the quality of Facebook targeting. Because everybody is like, so let's have a pie graph right here of everyone thinks that when I pick a target, like when I choose targeting, that, you know, and let's say like I go 25 to 35 likes, what's a very specific thing that they could like? Likes paintball. For you, Patty. Likes paintball, and then lives in a certain geo, lives in like Connecticut, for example. Yeah, no, I love pie charts. It's actually one of my favorite equations ever. Is 2 pi equals full stomach. But yeah, I've learned that lesson way too many times. But so yeah, you basically you target something like this, and you're like, okay, everybody in here has to basically be a great target. You know, I'm only targeting these people. When I think it's way overstated, the actual percent of this audience. Like, let's say if it's 1 million people in this, what percentage? Everyone thinks it's 100%, and I beg to differ. I think that it's way less than that. I think that it's less than 50% of it. And the reason why is you'll do this targeting, and you'll make it so it's like a phone call funnel. You'll get on the phone, and you'll have like some 65-year-old lady be like, I don't know why I'm here, but I saw your ad. And I'm like, oh, have you heard of paintball before? And she's like, no. You know, and you get her name and you search her profile and you're like, how did I get that target? You know, and that seems to be the common where it bleeds through, even with the ages and stuff. If you go general, you know, you target 25 to 35, and this lady isn't lying about her age on her profile. She has her birth date and everything. She's 907 years old, you know, etc. But for some reason, she got that paintball ad. So it's like realistically a very small portion. I'd say like this. We'll do the Pac-Man, amount. I'd say it's like 30% of the audience is actually who you target, and like we'll give a percentage here to bot. You know, it's fake, doesn't exist. Sorry, face, don't ban this live because of that. But you know, it's just non-existent traffic, and then the other percentage will go, what the fuck? Where'd they come from? You know. So it's like, even with these, and some audiences have less and less quality than you think. So it's like, and not every audience is built. Like, let's say if we change this from paintball, like no longer paintball, and we target Gary Vee. it may be different. Maybe even less people actually know about it. Or entrepreneur is one of the best ones. Entrepreneur. So if you target something like, we'll do US wide entrepreneur. So we'll go Entra, and then USA. We go Entra USA. Man, this pie chart, faster I erase this, which is so sweet, the bigger it gets. So we'll say that of the audience here, it's like, what's a good audience? You know, this Pac-Man can't fit as much in its mouth, that's for sure. It's like, this is your good audience right here. And the rest of it is like, they're not, because what can happen with it too is like, let's say, for example, somebody, you know, it's, you could say entrepreneurship. Yeah, and also everybody's bidding on it. But like, let's say you say entrepreneurship. What happens is and how you get put for this is like, you know, I'll have people send me YouTube videos from time to time. Patty Ward, that's to you. Etc. And it screws up your algorithm because it thinks you like it. Like, you'll mistakenly go to a website, or say your kids will go on your computer and go to some stupid website, or like, you know, yeah, like someone goes to a knitting website, and then instantly it thinks, because I went to that website and it had a Facebook pixel, that bam, you know, Matt likes knitting. Matt's a knitting king. And even if I put on the ads, I'm like, not interested. It's like for months I get followed around with like knitting masterminds and all this other bullshit for it. So it's like, for entrepreneur, if they even read an article about like Mark Cuban, you know, Mark Cuban fires his entire basketball team, and the guy is just a basketball, like, it's a kid who likes basketball, and now you're targeting this kid, and it thinks that he has an interest in entrepreneurs, but it's not relevant whatsoever. So like, some of these big ones can be horrible, or that's why some of the really untargeted ones can work well, like gypsy targeting. Like, how many people click on gypsy content? Not that many. Or if you go for like influencers who aren't that big, you know, like a smaller influencer in a niche. Or like, for example, when I was doing boxing, like, I wouldn't target Floyd Mayweather, because you don't get boxing fans when you target Floyd Mayweather. Like, you may get a small, like, very, very small portion, but you get all the people who love Floyd Mayweather's life. You know, they're like, oh, I fuck boxing. I just want to be like Floyd. It's like, bud, you know, Canadians coming out. But, you know, Floyd is a boxer, and they're like, oh, no, I think he just owns lots of good cars and everything else. So it's like, the quality of these audiences can go down. Also, even with ABM, a lot of people are bullshit assholes, and they'll just put companies that they work for that they don't work for. You know how many people lie about that? Like, I found a whole bunch of it. So it's like, you're always working with a smaller amount. And that's why interests, it's like, not all interests are the same. Not all the interests are good. That's why correlations can be really good. It's like, you know, if someone's interested in like natural healing, they'll probably, you know, target yoga. Target something. Target like whatever those star signs are that are a lie, by the way. But I'm just joking. Don't put your curses on me. Yeah, hippie demos. It's like, there's tons of demos that can go into this. So it's like, you know, once you do the correlated, I find are typically stronger because they haven't been pillaged. You know, they haven't been absolutely targeted by everybody. They haven't had bad experiences. It's like, who would you rather have as a client? Let's say I'm selling an info product on how to make money. People that, you know, have went through, got scammed a whole bunch through people who are shit at their craft. Or would I like to target some new people who would likely have this, but they may not have had exposure yet to all the Tony Robbins or the Deans or everything that they've ever seen. It's like, you really have to factor what's kind of going into it there too at the same time. And that's just, it's one of those tangents. And also, like, you're paying a tax on top of it. So Entra may make sense because it's such a big audience, you know, like, it's probably like, what, 300 trillion people. So you're paying a lot less for it, versus if you target like someone you haven't heard of. If you target Matt Farmer, which I don't have targeting yet. My goal in life is to have a targeting on Facebook. By then, only like the 900-year-olds will use it anyways. But, you know, versus you target me, very, very small amount of fans, etc. So you'd pay like, it's also their availability. Are they on the platform? You know? Have they went online lately? It's like, when you get audiences the size of like 10K, 100K, etc. Like, it really varies how much you can target them, because it may be a large audience, but there's only a certain amount that are on the platform. But we'll cover that a bit more. The next one is it used to be one of my most hated, which always means whenever I hate something, it's the next big thing. So like Facebook, I was like, never gonna work. How can you possibly beat Google when somebody searched buy refrigerator and beat them and make them, because I've done like display ads before and it's like, those are shit. They don't work worth anything. So I used to hate lookalikes, and there's so many different acronyms for it. I call it LLA, and I know it's not look alike. We'll just call it look alike audience. So LLA, you get it? But some people type them LALs. Some people do LL. They're all wrong. I'm right. And then, you know, there's lookalike audience targeting. So what am I going to rate ABM? ABM, I can't even rate. It's too very specific for like a corporate niche when you're targeting companies, etc. I wouldn't for like general. If I'm trying to get something cheap, ABM, not the way to go. That's your high value products. So lookalikes will definitely give. I'll probably give them a 9 out of 10 right now. They did the same path as general targeting. So, and now they're kind of going back up. Actually, they didn't go down as bad. They did, the technical term is shit the bed for a while. But like this is peak right before iOS 14.5. Lookalikes are good, but you need data to make lookalikes. And they're also a 50-50. So like 50-50 on lookalikes is the reason why is you need a good data source for it. And there's lots of different ways that you can target it. Like you do it based on like an action, or you can do it based on a purchase or like a purchase value. I like to do both, and I find those are the only ones that really work. There's some lookalike wizards out there, and I hate you guys. No, I'm kidding. I don't care. I've already accepted if I hate it, then it's probably going to work. Where they're targeting, like they're doing lookalikes of people who added to the cart, people who, you know, people who watched 5% of the video, how many, you know, etc. It's typically with a lookalike audience. So to answer your question, I'd say everyone gets it's just like the whole Facebook needs 40 conversions a week in order to work. No, it doesn't. You could do both ways. But I like to get at least 100 in there, and it won't even let you make them unless you have kind of like over 100, etc. As soon as I can make them, I do, and I try it, and it usually fails. And then later on in life, I go and I try it again, and it works. And you know, I'm like, shit. I wonder how long it's been since it's been working. But I like to, like, ideally, you'd have 500 to 1,000. And I like to have it of the end goal of what you actually want, or else I just notice there's a bunch of shit. It's like I do a lookalike of add to cart, or even if I set a goal of like, I just want add to carts. Facebook will give me 500,000 add to carts and not a single sale. And I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? Because normally like 10 add to carts will result in like 3 sales, or, well, maybe not that much. Let's say, well, fuck it, maybe that much. So lookalikes are pretty good. There's lots of things you can do. I find the best ones right now are the 1%, the 3%, and the 10%. So I'll target them all separately of a purchase, and then I'll make one too of the purchase value. And I'll target them separately, and then I'll also target them all together, do a combined interest. And an interest is typically based on the country size. So it's like a 1% lookalike is typically $3 million, or 3 million people in the US, because that's 1% of 300 million, which is the population. I know. Took me a while to figure that one out, so don't judge me. But I'll target them separately. 1% I find has the greatest chance to work, and all of them combined has the greatest chance to work. It's weird. Sometimes 3 won't work, and 10% will work. But like I said, don't get romantic about it. Try everything. Because if 5% works and all the other ones don't, I don't care. Yeah, it's, you know, as Arnold always says, let's go for it right here. This is possibly my favorite drop of all time.
I don't care.
Because I don't, you know, you can't get romantic about that kind of stuff. You know, it's if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I find lookalikes work really well. That you can't really use them to start the campaign, and it's like the better audience you seed with, the better it's going to be. So it's not always in your best interest to be like, oh, I'm gonna start this campaign with it and go from there. You welcome back, bam. You know, I don't know if it picks up TeamSpeak that much. I gotta turn it up because I was watching one of the videos and it was so quiet. So I know, right? Here, what I'll do. Oh, it's not picking it up. That's why. 1 second. I'm adding an audio device. Audio monitoring. Okay. So I'm gonna do this and this. And no, this is good because I've wanted to fix this for a bit. And like I said, oh, I think you know why it probably didn't work because I have a chat source for it. Okay, talk now.
Thor is here.
Oh, geez, that's way too. Okay, talk again.
Thor is here.
Nah.
Yeah. Well, are we
Okay.
good?
Yeah, no, we should be good now.
All right.
If you guys can't hear them, but yeah, it's basically. So I was just talking about lookalikes, and it's almost like what's working best, what's not working. It is. It's really account dependent. Some accounts just don't work for lookalikes. You can't. You know. Oh, we got more
Let me
visitors.
ask you a question here.
Get in the chopper.
Get in the chopper. So you like my arm? Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
When you stack these pups, go from 0 to 1, and then 1 to 3, or 0 to 3?
Okay, so I typically, because of when you make the lookalike, you can. So I go from, and I think it breaks it up like from 1 to 3, from 3 to 10. Because I typically, when I create a lookalike, I'll just be like, I'll have 3 segments in it, and then I'll do 1, 3, and 10. Sometimes I'll do 4, and I'll do 1, 3, and 5. It all depends on kind of if they're already working. If I'm seeing them start to work, that's when I'm like, it's granular time. Yeah.
Yep.
You basically just go nuts, and then you're creating as many as possible. But you know how when you create the lookalike, you can select like how many segments you want it in. And I'll select
Those
basically
will be contiguous, so there'll be one and then the other, and you can't overlap them in that, which I hate.
Well, yeah, and so here's another thing. Everyone always talks about overlap. And I'm just gonna write it down because I can't. Oh,
I like the overlap. I
love overlap. And Facebook, whenever you talk to Facebook marketing experts, they're like, according to our calculations, you have a 30% overlap, and if you want this to work properly, and you can't. And I'm like, according to my calculations, anything you've ever told me has not worked.
True.
Anything I've got directly from the reps. Although they did give me the Netflix method, which was brilliant. So you got to give them. So like overlap is a very big topic, and so many people they have these beliefs that are truths in their mind, and we've had a client before where he was convinced where it's like we need to have 40 conversions per week or it's not going to work, and it's like yeah. It does work without 40 per week. And yeah, of course you ideally want to have more than 40, but sometimes you're stuck with $100 budget that can't possibly get 40 per week or something like that. Like there's lots of different leads. Yeah, you're not basically going for that. So you really have to factor all of those things in. I think if overlap works, it works. Like I don't care. Even if it's not about overlap anymore. Like let's say I'll factor that, like that'll be in my mind. It's like maybe I'm too overlapped and I'll try something different. Or it's like, maybe if it stops working, at that point you try it. But to believe it is like I can't try to overlap because that would be a Facebook sin and everything goes to shit. It's like, no. You don't want to ever view those rules as an absolute truth. You have to view it as a belief, and it's subject to change. Everything is always subject to change in Facebook ads, and it will change. It's the same as lookalikes. It's never. There's a reason why the bar goes up, then down, and then up, and etc. It's like it goes from working to not working to working, and that's why you can't. Even if you had an old strategy where you're like, well, in 2010 this worked really well and it stopped working, but I'm never going to try it again because it stopped working. It's like, no, that'll probably come around and start to work again. So sometimes, when I get stuck on targeting, I'm like, just slap myself. Matt, what did you used to do? Maybe try that. Maybe that's working now. Where it's just like, it's the Trailer Park Boys would say, it's denial and error. You got to just keep trying stuff. You got to try stuff. Gonna have it'll potentially, it may work, it may not work. If it does work, whatever, But overlap, it's just like that's one of those things that Facebook, like, oh, we made you a report to show you how much you're overlapped, and you may want to change that. It's like, lady, this campaign has a 5 ROAS. I am not touching it. I don't care if it overlaps 10 trillion% over top. If it's as long as it's working, I don't care what it is, you know. And it's like because I get these cards of instructions, and typically what their what their advice does is lets you take more inventory that they don't like that they're not currently monetizing, or there's a way that they profit from it. So it's usually like when Facebook profits more, you profit less. You know, it's not that there's some hidden gem in there whatsoever. No, it's never. It's like YouTube or Google used to take us out for dinner. They'd pay for the most extravagant dinner. And of course, I'd go hard on the Google credit card. And always, like, I remember when YouTube first came out with ads, they're like, man, you gotta try YouTube ads. It's the greatest. We tried it. It was shit. We got some free credits for it at least, but you know, it's typically when they're pushing something, it doesn't work, but it will probably eventually still work. Or not still work, but it will eventually work with the campaigns, but it may just be too early. But whenever they're pushing something, it usually means that nobody's using it. And if nobody's using it, it usually means that it doesn't work. Because if somebody finds something that works and they're the only one there, they're going to be spending $10 million a day. They don't give a fuck. They'll take up the entire inventory. It's an auction system. So it's like they'll just buy everything no matter what happens. And it's like it's not until there's that competition that like prices go up and it gets more competitive and everything else. It's like, and that's where it benefits Google, where it's like, haha, people are bidding against each other now, so we can jack up the rates and then invisibly jack up the rates too at the same time. Because ad rates over time basically go like this, just to line up. And I think a lot of that is artificial because we're in a recession now, and sometimes they're like, "Oh yeah, more people are bidding," even though lots of companies are like, "Oh yeah, no, we're not bidding," you know. And it's pretty much just an alligator mouth of these evil guys, um, taking our money. But yeah, that's
Hey, we're paying.
and now we're paying. And as long as it's only when it becomes unprofitable, and it did happen recently where they lost a ton of advertisers and a ton of ads, and that's where the equilibrium hits. It's like not until we get to that proper equilibrium that it could go the other way for it. So no, lookalikes are interesting. I used to hate them. I didn't use them. Then during COVID, it was just money printing and no effort too. That's when I was like, all right, I have no job anymore because I don't have to do granular targeting. Where it used to be in a, like where you used to just set up like 100 different fucking interests for targeting, and then I'd just keep whatever 60. Like I'd keep these ones, and then I'd cut out these ones, and then how you get efficiencies, you'd raise the budgets, and then kind of use the budgets to push the money behind whatever's working and whatever's not working, etc. So it's like it's really going like that. But lookalikes right now, they're coming back and they're actually pretty good. One of the best campaigns I have for my affiliate stuff is I like to call it LLAALL because lookalike all, and it looks horrible, but I understand what it means, and anybody looking at it would be like, the fuck? You kind of have to have your own encoding when it comes to campaigns, or you know, even Facebook will steal your ideas. But yeah, so lookalike all, that's the winner right there. It looks like a smiley face even. Um, but yeah, so it's like the lookalike all is absolutely killing it for
Hey,
me.
it's a palindrome. Did you notice that?
I guess kind of is.
LLAALL. Absolutely 100% palindrome.
Yeah, no, I noticed that. That's also why I liked it.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and LLA, I've been trying to justify my entire career. It's where it's like it's lookalike audience because it's not like you call it interest IA interest audience, but it's just a bad habit, and I'm illiterate. That's why I buy ads. So we kind of go from there, but you know, it's lookalikes. They're good. Can't complain. You know, but they don't always work. Like I said, some accounts are cursed. It's like I said, it's 50-50 on lookalike audiences. You never know. And you always want to kind of go back and keep trying them, and over time, try more, make different audiences, etc. But it's like we're going back towards the COVID method. Is just like a G plus.
I've got a question about
yeah.
LLA. If you have your targeting more or less aligned, I think it would help your lookalike.
It does. Yeah,
learn.
that's why it's like your seed audience is pretty important at the very beginning. Like when you do interest, you don't want to do anything stupid for your interest. And you kind of know if it is. Like, of course, some could say, like, oh, Gypsy is stupid. It's like, no, because they probably like spiritual stuff and everything else,
Oh, you can
etc.
target Gypsy on Facebook?
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Wow.
talking about that in interest. Like, where the creative people, like our Mr. Chan, he would target the most creative stuff I've ever heard. He'd be like, man, be all set. I want to target pickles. And I'm like, okay, go for it, man. But I prefer to like the seed audience is going to be mainly like a mix of interests, and I will kind of get that gender. I'll try to figure out which you always have to accept. You're probably wrong, and I'm probably wrong most of the time. Where I'm like, I'll figure out right at the beginning, so it eventually goes into like a general LLA. But it's like your interest at the beginning will be interest, and then plus age, and then sometimes plus gender, and that's like the best way. And I'll come up like I'll try to put myself in the customer's shoes and be like, who's gonna be pumped? Like, who's gonna read this and be like, oh boy, I want to buy this, etc. So it's like I do like to make that seed audience good. I don't start out, if you start out with really general,
Gender is
you have an issue where you can somewhat make it toxic, where it's like, if you, let's say you get 0 sales and you spend $500 and you got 1,000 clicks of people that don't fix your product, your account's naturally going to start freaking out that it can't find any conversions, and you'll kind of send it in like a spin, a death spiral of like, this account's not going to go so well after the fact. So it's like, it's an advantage when, and being in an agency world is like, typically I'd scale spend that was already working. So like I'd just add on. I'd keep what's working. You always keep what's working. It's like being a plumber. Like, if the pipe has a leak, you don't replace the entire plumbing system. You fix the leak. You fix the shitty campaigns, you cut them out, you keep the good ones, and then you build on top of it. So then on top of that, I'm building lookalikes to see if I can beat them there. I'm building interest to see if I can work it there. Hell, maybe ABM, some behaviors, pretty much everything for it. So it's like, yeah, you want to do that. So next one to talk about, whoa pen, I did not do that, for the record, guys.
new pen.
So yeah, I just bought this too. So geo targeting is interesting because this is where the tax method really comes in. Like, the difference between targeting a country, targeting a state, and targeting a city is like significant. It can be like 300% cost increase for it, and it's only if that makes sense. So like, let's say if you can sell US wide, even if I have more sales in California, I typically won't just target California, because what happens is you pay 300% more, and then it turns out you would have got the rest of the country free for paying the exact same amount. So like, let's say for example, I pay $50 US, and I get all my some of my conversions, like 5 are from California. Let's say that the 5% are from California. It wouldn't always make sense. So then I spend 50 on California, and then you'll probably only still get 5 from California, and you won't get the other like 1 from New York and like 1 from GA or etc. It's like you don't. We got to move this over a little bit. Let's see. We're gonna move this out of the way. Whoa, now.
You think if
Whoa.
you spent, how much less do you think you'd have to spend in Canada to not get 5 to get 4? You think you could spend less in Canada and still get the 5? Of course you could, but how far?
It really depends how much you can. So, it's not Canada, it's California, so we'll call it Cal. I knew that would be a confusing one. California.
Oops.
I lost my mouse on the screen. Here, 1 second. We gotta hit everybody with
California.
There we go.
California.
So it really depends. Like, let's say sometimes you don't have a choice where you have to hit it, or if you have like a local event or something to that extent, you can't really here, let's move this over so we can see the screen. It really doesn't like on the remote on wireless display when I resize windows and stuff, but whatever. So we can see it's just like it, unless it super overperforms. Like, let's say you're selling something like whatever, California flags, or you have California flags or something, and it's like you'll probably sell them nationwide because a lot of people have lived in California. but you won't. It's like it's rare for it, and typically I only define the geo if the targeting and message, like the ads will typically change for California, like call it a California sale or etc. But it's really hard for it to overcome that like 300% tax that you get from it. Oh, I can't even read anymore.
I
I
have a
don't need to.
situation, I think, if I
But it's
can.
like with events, it's different too because a lot of the times, like you wouldn't target a whole state, but everybody gets so romantic where they're like, I want to target 20 miles around this event. You know, I want only this, Matt, like 20 miles, because no one's willing to travel further, etc. But the problem is that geo, it's the whole pie thing of like, is it accurate or not? Probably not. You know, it's it's probably not the most accurate for area because it'll be like it depends where their ISP is, or like if they're using any kind of a VPN or anything like that, or if they're at a business that VPNs to their main one, and it's like there's all these variables that could happen for it. So I'll typically, if they want 20 miles, I'm gonna try to convince them to do like 80 miles or 100 miles, because naturally it's going to try to get to the point that it needs to get. Anyways, like you're gonna naturally have it target the people in that area. Like let's say you had an event in whatever with enough time in San Diego, you target worldwide, it's probably going to spend most in California. But at that point, like the efficiency doesn't make sense. Like, of course, it's 300%, way more than 300% more expensive to convince somebody from like, say, Louisiana to go all the way down to California for this event. Because number one, they probably hate California, and number two, or you know what I mean. It's like it's one of those things where like in that point it would make sense like on the geo side. But I typically like to go bigger. You could also drop a point, and that's really good for like I did a bunch of marketing around as like let's say for example, if I'm promoting myself, if I want Matt Farmer to be everywhere, I'm waiting until traffic conversion. I'm dropping a point on San Diego and then going all around that area and then doing an ad set that's all of San Diego and then potentially targeting people in California that like digital marketer. It's like it all depends on the layers. It's like you want a good combination with it, but it usually if it's like if you see these stats and it's like and I worked for this TV network where we did the same thing where it was like California and New York had the most conversions, but when we narrowed it down there, the tax we paid. So because we're paying instead of a $10 CPM, we're paying a $60 CPM. It's technically 6 times more expensive. So even though on the overall campaign, like US wide, they would come in the cheapest. There's no way of us amping that up. And it seemed like when we spent just directly in that area, it costs more to basically cost just as much as getting all the other stuff, and then from there we got the whole country, like all the other residual, we got those free pretty much because it was the same budget. Like let's say $200 a day or $2,000 a day, we go from just targeting the US for that to targeting New York and then targeting California. It's like we'd kind of get the same amount of conversions in the end, but then we wouldn't get the odd Chicago conversion or the odd this and that. And it's like geos I typically only put down based on like, yeah, if the geo is going to affect whether they can go there or whether they would travel. Of course, for some, free knitting event, people aren't going to be like, oh, damn, I'm traveling 6,000 miles angler across country in order to attend that knitting event because this is what I need in my life. But like, no, you're not going to get people there versus like, older ladies in that 20-mile or 80-mile area would be like, oh, yeah, I'll travel an hour to learn how to power knit myself some fucking rugs, go hard this Christmas. So it's like Geo, it's really interesting. Geo's always better, but the product has to support Geo too at the same time. It's like, of course I'm gonna try it, and this is the whole like, am I gonna cut it off and be like, all right, I'm only targeting US, blah blah blah. No, I'm still gonna try it because maybe at some point that tax will be worthwhile, and it has because the campaign has 300% more performance in that area. It actually nets as a better cost overall, and I'm more saturated there and everything else. So like, there is times that it can make sense to do it, but with events especially, and I'll do different campaigns where it's like if an interest is working really well, I'll take that interest, and let's say it worked at 80 miles. I'm like, all right, motherfucker, we're amping it up 200 miles. Boom, let's fully push this because the interest works in this small range. Maybe it'll work in an even bigger, and because the audience is bigger, I'll pay less. And even if the algorithm still focuses on this tiny circle around the actual point of what I wanted to target, you're net getting a benefit from it because you're bringing in a bigger audience for it. DMAs are also really good. DMAs are like, they're not just targeting like Chicago. It's targeting like all the cities of Chicago. It's like targeting Vancouver. Like there isn't just Vancouver. There's like Vancouver, West Vancouver, North Vancouver, then all the other shitty Vancouvers like Surrey. No, I'm just joking. Just kidding. Um, but yeah, no, it's like the DMA targets the entire. It's like they call it the Greater Vancouver region, where it targets New York. It's like New York has a DMA, but that targets like Brooklyn and Bronx and Jamaica, New York, and blah blah blah, all those other areas. Versus targeting like straight in New York City is typically targeting like Manhattan area and just like the smaller area of it there. So it's really testing it out. But I always want to kind of like make it as big as possible because it's technically you may be missing low hanging fruit of people that are willing to travel. Like, let's say I was going to show up in New York. Of course, people would travel from New Jersey. Of course, people would travel from Florida, from California. No, I'm kidding. But, it's just like, or if it's like a special one time event where it's like, Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi are cage fighting. Or it's like some big boxing event. Floyd Mayweather is fighting Manny Pacquiao, but they're both fighting each other with their arms taped behind their back. It's like people from everywhere are going to want to go that. So it makes sense to go out versus if it's small boxing, like a town boxing match of like, Hillbilly 1 versus Hillbilly 2. No one else knows about them. No one's willing to travel. It's going to be a smaller area, but the people in that smaller area are going to like, hell yeah, I want to see Hillbilly 1 and Hillbilly 2 go at it and see who gets fucked up. Type deal, So it's like you really want to weigh that, but I always find myself typically targeting maximum geography, especially at the start. Like even if I think a product's gonna outperform in California or in Los Angeles, but it's US wide, I'm going US wide and I'm letting the algorithm find that because it's like I want the lowest possible CPM because if I'm wrong and it's not just LA and it's other places too, you're kind of like it's a smaller campaign you built, so it's a limit of scale for it too at the same time. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns?
Digging it.
Yeah, no, it's good, right? And that's the whole thing too of like one thing you have to factor at the same time is it's like audience size and everything else. Like you do want to factor like how big an audience is and everything else. Here, I'm just going to join back up to Billy. I call this PC Billy for a reason because it's going to make me $1 billion. Next is like audience size of your actual ad sets and how much scale you can typically go for it. Because an audience size, like let's say if you have an audience size of 10,000, one of the factors is just like out of that 10,000, how many are going to be online per day? Probably not that many. Like the audience is big and all. But out of 10,000, how many are going to, we're going to scroll this around a bit. But yeah, how many are actually going to be online to view the ads? And it's probably only like, a couple hundred of those. And then it's like 100,000. Like if an audience is 100,000, typically this is a better audience size. It's like 10,000. You could probably go like $10 per day. Ish. You may max it out. And it's going to have a longevity. So the harder you run it to its maximum, the faster you kill that audience because you're getting repeat people. It's like 100,000 people. You'll kind of get that like 50 to 100. Oh, I'd hit a button. 50 to 100 people dollars per day on spend. It's not that much. You can go beyond that, but you just know that you're going to burn that audience out really quickly. Like the more you spend, the more longevity that will have versus like 1 million audience. It's like it depends on the product too and how much penetration and click through and everything. But it's like 1 million, if it's everything's optimal, it's good conversion. You look at all the conversion rates, you can typically spend $1,000 per day up to, I'm going to add that little just in case somebody quotes me on it later. And then like 10 million.
And you'll get way better costs like at the lower end of
yeah,
spend,
and it's like
obviously.
longevity. If you have a million audience and you only spend $10 a day, you're targeting that shit all year. You'll never have it
Low
because it's like
frequency.
out of the million, only 100,000 are on per day. You're spending $10. You're hitting 1,000 of them. Like to get over that, to maximize that. So it's like a 10 million audience. Like
Your
You don't get
CPMs are cheaper that way.
yeah, you're doing it more efficiently, and you're doing less of like I explained the whole of how like Instagram explained targeting of just how they do it, and like they basically, so let's go smaller and then smaller. They start at the lowest hanging fruit here, and then as your audience runs out, they go to like less targeted. So they go at who they think's going to convert first, and then they slowly go up the polls, and it's like eventually you get to that audience that just doesn't convert. So it's like, it puts a lot of just pressure and everything in general on it. Oh, thanks, Microsoft. Tips. I needed you right now.
Because they want to spend your money, obviously. They're not just
Well,
going to
no,
leave
they're gonna
money on the
spend your
table.
money no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what. So, like, let's say if you have a $10,000 audience and you spend $10,000 per day, that would just equal like your CPM
It's
will
just a
just
general, basically.
well,
right?
your CPM is going to go up massive. Your CPM will magically be like $20,000, and you'll target 500 people. You know what I
And it's
mean? Like the targeting can't handle it, but you'll still spend the money, no matter what. You spend the money. It doesn't matter what it is. Like
It's
so,
$9,990 just in general, basically, or even
yeah,
worse, or
3,333
exactly.
and one third.
yeah. That's how
It's,
much you'll spend. 3,333 and one third of targeting, in general for it. So it's like that's something you do have to factor that, um, on your spend and on everything where it's like yeah if you have a 10,000 audience you can spend that but it's like you want to go to an optimal where you'll notice that if you overspend on an audience your costs are going to go up. It's like and then 10,000 you could do like 3,000 a day to like 10,000. You may burn it out fast. It all depends on click-through rates and everything else and how much you're converting and what you're willing to pay. Like let's say if it's fleshing out and you're paying a $500 CPM, so you're only targeting $1,000 for 500, then you can of course spend quite a bit more for it. Then it's like if you want to spend a lot, if you want to spend 100K in a single day and be a man or a woman or whatever you want, or a cow or a TV or a computer, it doesn't matter what you want. I can't take anybody out from this, but it's like you'll want about 100 million to spend like 10K per day, and this is when you're a big baller. I'll send you an award if you do this. It'll just be $1 gold tinfoiled. I don't know. I don't have anything on top of it. But yeah, it's basically like in order to do this, you'll need a big audience, or you'll just need something that converts at a high value, like an absolute motherfucker. And it doesn't matter what CPM you pay or what click cost you pay because you're just netting so much profit from it. Like I'm selling yachts, doesn't matter. If I sell one yacht, I make millions of dollars. We're good. But typically, it's like these are the worldwide audiences because if you want that to be targeted, there's not that like 10 million or 100 million people in the U.S. of A. Is pretty. Yeah, it's a third of the population. So what does a third of the population have in common? Not much, other than they probably dislike another third of the population. That's it. Like political,
Sounds
you
like
could potentially
USA.
do that. Sounds like USA. But at that point, you want like a worldwide. Worldwide products are ideal. If you could sell worldwide, 3 billion or sorry, 7 billion people audience, it won't ever be that much because there's kids and stuff and active users. You got to factor how many active users there are because even out of that 100 million, it's like how many of these are actively using Facebook per day? It's probably only 20 million. And eventually you'll have that whole like you'll use all your market up and everything else, but it's kind of like you really have to see when there's going to be a point when you up your budget and there's net no return from it just because it's like I paid the more for the same result. Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you, Facebook. Because that happens a lot. Don't be like that. If you have a 10,000 audience, just respect it. That who cares if it wins? If you spend $10 and you make $50 every day, who fucking cares? Just make 1,000 more of those campaigns. If to get to what your goal is, it's still making money. Like any campaign that makes money, I'm not gonna hate on targeting where it's like, well, we can only spend $10 a day, but we make $100 a day. It's like, bro, that's $90 a day. Who cares? Just make 100 more of these targeting groups, and you're making whatever $9,000 a day. You've got a lot better from it and everything else. But Yeah, no, we're at time right now. I don't want to go too long into this because I got a million other lessons to go, but this is kind of like targeting 101 where we're at currently. Just to do quick review, remarketing, retargeting, and it's not that good right now, just because of the fact that you know what? We're gonna zoom this in even more for all you people who can't see up there. Control plus 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 plus. Wow, I have a button that puts in the date. That's amazing. Okay, so yeah, remarketing, retargeting. This naturally happens in your campaigns. You're just using this. It's smaller budgets than what it used to be. Sometimes it would be like a 50-50 on retargeting and interest targeting, but now this just kind of gets built into interest. General targeting, it's starting to become better. I'd recommend trying general targeting, especially if you have an established account. Interest targeting, it's not as good as it was before. Like when everything dumped after 14.5, it went back to interest targeting. I'd still recommend it being part of your campaigns, kind of at least 20-30%, trying to find new audience. Behavioral targeting, it depends if your product does have behaviors for it. Like engaged shoppers could be something good to lay over. Account-based marketing, this really just works for like corporate stuff or like really high value corporate things where you do have to target job positions like CEO and everything else. And Facebook isn't always the best platform to do it on. You may even just do it better on Twitter and LinkedIn and other ones that have a higher pie graph of like what the better targeting is. Lookalike audiences, these are going to be the absolute, these in general are going to be the future. So watch out for it. 2023. I guarantee these are going to be a lot better. Geo targeting, we're still at the point. You don't want to target very small areas and think you're going to convert there. You want your geo targeting to be as large as possible. Age and gender, we didn't fully go over that. I'll kind of go over that next time. But I don't want to give away too many gems for you because, yeah, you guys won't try them. And definitely throw in the comments what kind of campaigns are working for you right now, which new ones have you tried, and any campaigns that are STB, shit the bed, that aren't working, where you tried it, it absolutely failed. Like failure is a good way of learning too at the same time, where you're like, well, found out that doesn't work. That's valuable information. So yeah, and also like, follow, etc. I'm gonna have a lot more of these actual training videos coming. This is my bread and butter. I've been training marketing for way too long right now, and this is truly the current stat of marketing. These are, and I can show you my campaigns. These are what's good, what's working, everything that you want to basically take a look at now. But anyways, thank you guys for joining. Mr. Patrick Tronstar, thanks for joining, asking questions. It's always good to have that interaction. If you want to be on the show and ask me questions, I'd love a fireside chat, a Q&A, anything
Sure,
else,
yeah.
let me know if anything. And next time, you ask me any kind of question, I'm going to be like, all right, we're booting up the stream. Let's go over it. And of course, wife of mine, aka Tiffany Farmer, thanks for joining. Even though you don't have
Yep.
marketing questions, I will turn you into a savage marketer just so I can take a break, smoke more cigars, drink more energy drinks, and everything else. But
I don't
appreciate
even know
everyone for
what you
joining.
said during this whole stream.
I know that was the whole goal of it, so we officially did it. Anyways, everybody, bam! Leave me some comments, please. All right, bye.
Woo.
Oh, maybe we have a good Arnold goodbye that we can drop for these guys.
I'm back.
No, not I'm back.
Oh, that's for next time.
Yeah, that's for next time. I need like an I'll be back.
Oh, you don't have I'll be back.
Yeah, that's right. I don't.
Oh man, that's like a
Um.
top 3 right there, Arnie.
Okay, I'll leave you guys with this.
I have no emotions. If someone steals the car right out in front of my house, I would just laugh at it and buy myself a new